type in here, study group, new readings. And pin it. Okay, there it is. All right. Hey guys. All right. Happy, study group time. I'm still energetically reeling. I'm like, okay, my energy started to come down though. I'm finally getting my energy down. So it's feeling a little bit better. All right, guys. Hi. Hello. Hi. Hi, y'all. How y'all doing? How you doing? All right. Got a little gnat that's flying around, so just FYI in case you see something randomly flying around. And I've had people sometimes I'll do this and there's dust floating in, and I know it's dust, and people are like, did you see that, Ferny? Did you see it in your picture? I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's dust because I was tapping something, so I never assume that it's a spirit or something like that. Just is the way it is. I never assume something's a supernatural experience or a spirit. I always assume and say, what's behind this? So, all right. So for those of you tuning in, this is study group time. So no personal readings or personal questions. Everything must pertain to the topic, which is the secret, which we were talking about law of attraction and manifesting and so forth. And so that's what this is about. So, if you're tuning in because you want a personal reading or ask me a personal question about your life, unfortunately that wasn't the last hour. This hour is now study group, and it's only the study material. So if you want to ask me a question, I'm still taking questions, but the questions have to pertain to the material in the book that we're going to read, or to my comments, or to the topics, whether they be spiritual topics or topics that have to do with manifestation or law of attraction. So anything about that, I'm totally down for. So Mazel tov on your TV experience. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was so funny. It was a lot of fun. It was 4 minutes. It literally was no time at all. It was 4 minutes, but and it was live, right? And I might have 2 more segments coming because the producer, she wants to do 2 more. But I'm gonna record them on Monday, I believe, if everything stays the same. I'm recording them on Monday, and then they're gonna put them out in the next few weeks. So, but as soon as the segment is live or it's on the site, I'll share it so y'all can check it out and see it as well. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's interesting because those people are hard-ass working people. I just have to tell you, because you could tell they have this much time, and they got a lot to do in a very short period of time. So whenever I was speaking to the producer, she was, and she's a host as well, but she's a producer. She's you could tell she's doing 17,000 different things at the same time, which I get it, because I was the same way when I used to work at Starbucks. So I was I totally understand where your mind is in all of this stuff. But she was just here, and halfway through the recording, when she was, because she asked me, she was gonna ask me 2 questions, and halfway through me answering the first question, her feed died, so she couldn't hear me at all. She could just see my lips moving, but everybody else still heard me on live, and so it still came across, and she was still, I could hear her, I could hear them, but she lost the feed. So literally it was half the conversation she didn't even hear, but it still came out, so it worked out okay. But as soon as she finished the segment, then she wrapped, and then automatically I could see her again, and then she was there was 3 or 4 people coming up to her, and she was I don't have to eat a feed or whatever, and she was I'm girl, you were busting your ass, girl. So man, she was working it. But yeah, that's what tends to happen with people in the media and in the news industry. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I actually got a buzz and a kick out of it. I think I spent more time being nervous or anxious about it than anything else, even though I'm used to being on camera, y'all. I'm used to talking to y'all. But the thing about it is, because this is television, I have to filter some of the words that I use, which I already filter my words when I do appointments, because I never assume, even though I can have a foul mouth, I never assume that the person that I'm talking to in a session or an appointment, I never assume that they are okay with me being, raunchy or with the way that I am sometimes when I'm on camera. So I always just go into professional mode, and I operate in a very professional way. But when I'm here, this is different. This is space where I can really be unfiltered and open. And so I allow myself to be very candid. But when you're on TV, you have to watch what you're saying. You have to word it in a certain way. And so that's pretty much what it was about. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I really got a kick out of it. Thank you. I know Ray keeps telling me, she's like, you were good. She she's the one that snapped the pictures that I shared with y'all. Because I like a dumbass, I did not think that I was going to need to record it so I could see it right away. I assumed that they were going to just post it on the website when they post it on the website. I just don't know when that's going to happen. So I was like, So I was like, I should have recorded it, or I should have, because I don't have any, like, I don't have it. So I was like, okay, so I should have recorded, I should have set up my computer and I should have recorded the segment. Instead, I was just like, no, yeah, like a pendejo. So, oh, thank you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Ray was saying, she said that I sounded like I do this for a living. Oh my God, I do this for a living. But when you're on camera, and not only that, when you have it's like you're practicing doing a TikTok or practicing doing something, and you got 4 minutes to be eloquent and to get across the message you need to get across. I spent a good hour and a half before that 4 minute segment just rehearsing what I was going to talk about or what I was going to say, and trying to find, because I knew I wasn't going to memorize what I wrote out. So I was like, okay, I got to just let it flow. And so that's what ended up happening. And I had to rehearse it just so I could make sure that it was going to flow. Because if I have an idea in my head, I'm not used to rehearsing what I have to say to people. I just go with it in the moment and it comes forward. And so when it's that kind of situation, I want to give them what they're wanting. And they want ratings. They want something to look good on camera. They're trying to increase the ratings of the show. They're trying to do all these things. I want to give them what they want. So I was like, I need to come across in a way where I'm going to like hit it. And so I don't know if I did. Ray says that I did good. I still haven't seen or heard myself, so I don't know, but my standards for myself are different too. My best friend, she was like, I want to see it, where is it, like, and I was like, I don't know, I haven't seen it yet, so we'll see. So yeah, if Ray really loved me, Ray would have recorded the segment, but she didn't record the segment. She just snapped a bunch of pictures. So that's just the truth of it. That's just the truth of it. Yeah. Oh, Amers, yeah. Brief people for a living. It's so challenging to be clear yet get the point across. Yeah, this is why I like structure when it has a loose like, setup. It works better for me just because it gives me the freedom to play and it feels like I'm playing. But when I need to like hit the target or hit the mark, that's a different story. I was freaking out because initially when they had approached me to be on the show, I thought I was going to be doing readings on live, and that freaked me out more just because, as y'all well know, as being regular viewers, when I do readings for people, even though my intention is to just knock it out of the park every single time, it doesn't always happen, or the person isn't always in the best mental place to understand what I'm talking about. And sometimes, even if you're saying something and it's accurate, the person may not be hearing it in the way you're getting it across, or they may not understand what you're saying and completely not think that you're talking about something that is obvious for them. That's one situation you run into. The second situation is just the nervousness and the anxiety of being in front of a camera. For those of you who follow me enough and watch me work, because I am in front of an audience, right? I'm in front of, several of y'all. I mean, usually when I do these lives, there are about 100 people that show up on all the different platforms together. So usually I'll have at least 100 people that I'm talking and communicating. And that's already just the idea of being in front of 100 people and trying to connect and to validate and to give them something. That's already a scary thing to go through. So whenever I'm having a reading or I'm trying to connect someone with their loved one and it doesn't seem like I'm hitting the mark, or they're not connecting with the information, or it's not coming through in the way that it needs to, immediately my ego gets triggered, because my ego is like, I don't want to waste your time and not tell you something to help you connect with your loved one. I want you to connect with your loved one. I want you to have this experience. I want you to have the experience you're seeing everybody else have. And so my ego kicks in. And at the same time, there's also the other side of the ego, which is like, look, Ferny, you look like a complete dumbass in front of all these people. You're telling people that you're a psychic medium, and here you are. They don't know what you're talking about, and you obviously don't look like a psychic medium because you ain't hitting nothing. So all that gets triggered as soon as I start to do a reading for someone live and they're not connecting, and it's just not translating over in the way that I would prefer. And when that happens, when my ego gets triggered, and this is, you can use this as spiritual talk, right? And we'll get to the book. Don't worry, we'll get to the book. But when my ego gets triggered, I have to recenter. I have to rebalance it, because there's that one side that's saying, you're a dumbass, you're not achieving your goal, and you look stupid in front of a camera, in front of all these people, you're making a dumbass out of yourself. That's that part of me that's going off. And then there's the other side of me that's saying, you're disappointing this person, you're breaking their heart. They finally got in to talk to you, Ferny. They finally got you to pick them, and you flopped. And so those two things start to come up in my mind, and I'm battling that in the moment. And some of you may notice when I'm doing that, because what I immediately do to recover myself or to bring myself back to a place where I can move on to the next person if I have to, is I look away. And the reason why I look away is because, for two reasons. One is don't want that person's face or whatever they're doing with their face, whether they realize it or not. I don't want that to affect what is going on in my head. I don't want it to send me into a tailspin of feeling like I'm disappointing someone. That's one. Two is I'm missing something. I automatically assume that if it's not connecting, if the person isn't hearing it the way that I intended, or it's just not connecting for them, I don't assume that they're wrong. I assume that I'm misinterpreting something and I messed up. That's why I always assume. And so what I tend to do is I turn away because I need to concentrate on what's coming through. So I turn away and I ask them, okay, y'all, clarify the shit for me because it's getting confusing and I'm a little lost myself. And so I ask them to give me anything to clarify what they're trying to communicate across. Sometimes they'll give me 2 or 3 more pieces. Sometimes they don't, and they repeat what they said, which automatically to me means either I'm missing the obvious sense of it, or the person who I'm talking to is missing it and they want me to repeat it because they know that that's it, that's what it is. So it gets tricky. So it's almost like, oh, so I have to recenter, look away, to get my ego to de-trigger my ego, and then I look away so I can focus on what's going on in my head and I can clarify it if I can, and then I'll come back and try to hit it again. If I cannot get someone to understand what I'm saying, or they're just not connecting with it, I just have to drop it, because we can spend 30 minutes trying to figure out one piece of information, but if I move on to the next piece of information that's coming through and they connect with 3 or 4 pieces of information, but they weren't able to make sense of that, then it's recovered and I'm able to give them something. But if I just try to stick to that one thing because I want to look good on camera, or because I want to be right, or because whatever, at that point, it ruins the point of the session, and I miss an opportunity to give them something else that might make sense for them. So that's how it works, and so that's how I had to recover myself. It's not an easy thing to do this. This is like a nerve-wracking thing, but I thought I was going to be doing readings on live TV. And that was freaking me out more than just talking. I can talk on camera. I love talking. Y'all know I love talking on camera. It's not that. It's lives on, because you don't always hit it. And so that was what was freaking me out. And because this was one of my first appearances on television in a market, I didn't want to shoot myself in the foot, because then, if I like being bad, nope, then definitely I was gonna take a hit with my reputation. It was a risk, but that's the thing, y'all. Like anything you want to do in your life, anything that you are trying to achieve, whether it be with your career, with your passion, with your whatever you want to do, you have to take a risk. And sometimes the risk is to yourself, to your ego, to your brand. When a singer gets on a stage and they're performing, if they fall off the stage, they're going to feel stupid, and it's completely throw them off. They have to recover themselves. And so whenever I hear other professionals and I listen to how they recover themselves, or what they have to do mentally to kind of get themselves in the right state, I pay attention to those things, because those are things that I've been practicing and been learning how to do myself, because I've expected to be on television, which is what ended up happening. I was telling her, I was like, I set up my space, I set up my office, and I moved things a certain way, and I got special light, and I got a special microphone and all these other things, because the mindset in my head was that, okay, I need to be prepared for when they want to do television interviews, because I'm not planning on traveling anywhere for an interview, so it's going to have to be through FaceTime or on over the wire. So I need to have it all set up so it looks professional, or it looks good. And so that's been my intention. So I've been trying to do those little things and practice with the mic and practice with this, and so that's the mindset. And that mindset is, you could say, it prepared me for being on TV, or it aligned me for being on TV, because I'm doing the work. I'm doing my part of it. If I intend for something to happen, then I do my part of it, and then I try to fulfill the next step. Here's another little example of how I've done that. When we moved here, right before we moved here, I went on a trip with my best friend, and we went to Universal Studios in Orlando. And while we were there, we were at one of the shops, the gift shops, and they had an NBC hat with the little ostrich, the NBC hat. So I had gotten, because a year before that, my partner's mother, she had gotten me one of those actors chairs, those actor chairs that open up, and that, it has they're high actors chair. You know what I'm talking about, actors chairs, right? Well, I had gotten an actors chair from her, and it says Ferny, and I love it. And it's almost like, whenever you're sitting and you're watching a scene or whatever, and it's for stars and such. So she got me one a year before we moved here, and I have it. It's in my closet. I had it out for a while, and I was like, nah. So, but it's there, and I had gotten an NBC cap, and I had put the NBC cap and I hung it on the edge of the chair, and it was there for a while. I even took pictures of it and everything. And whenever I would see it, and I would say to myself, like, that I'm going to do something for them, or I'm going to do a show for them, or there's something through NBC that I'm going to do. And the reason why I have a hat is because they gave it to me when I showed up to shoot the scenes they wanted me to shoot. That's the twisted mindset that I had around that, because that's what you have to do. You have to kind of use props and use things to get your mind around the idea of what you're trying to manifest. And that's what I did. I had the actor's chair, which was very like official, that had Ferny psychic medium on it that she had put on there. And then I had my NBC hat. And so lo and behold, we move here, and then shortly after we move here, NBC announces that and the thing about it is, I don't really want to have to travel to New York or to LA to do anything on television or whatever. I just would rather have it be down the road. And so, but it's because I'm lazy, right? I don't want to have to do extra, unless I have to. And Ray knows that. I was like, give me your opinions. Like, give me some suggestions on what I can do for my TikTok, but don't tell me let it be easy. I don't want it to be too much work, right? So that was the idea. I was like, the NBC hat's there because I got it when I went to the NBC studios to shoot what they wanted me to shoot and record. And they gave me the hat as like, hey, here's a hat, And so that's what I would think of whenever I would see my chair and my hat. And I had it out for a while, and that's what I was always thinking of. But NBC, lo and behold, NBC, shortly after we moved here, announced that they were going to open studios here in Albuquerque, which is just an hour away. And they did, and they have studios here. So NBC has television or movie studios here. So I was like, So it's like, okay, I'm pretty close. They're getting closer to me. I didn't have to go to them. So that was funny. I thought that was hysterical. But that's just an example. Like the exercises or the strategy in my head whenever I have an opportunity to focus on manifesting something, or to focus on drawing an experience to myself. It's also funny because I was talking to another client, and there is a woman who is a channeler. She was just on a show with a very prominent guy who interviews channelers, other channelers, and I've actually wanted to get on his show, or I'm like, I'm going to end up on his show one day. And I could probably just email him and say, hey, I'm a channeler, check out my stuff and have me on your show. But I don't want to have to do that. I would rather people come to me, because for me, that shows the evidence of alignment. I want to see the alignment. I want to see the alignment happen. I don't want to overdo it, right? And granted, it might be that easy, but I don't want that. I want to have the experience of having people approach me and tell me I'm a fit for them, or I'm, what they're looking for. So, and that's just me. That's my ego, right? But this lady, she's a channeler, and it's interesting because I listened to her interview, and she's really cool. I actually thought, so she had emailed me and said, I was recently on, this guy's show, check me out, and I would like to be in your podcast. And I haven't recorded a podcast in like a few weeks, or actually in like a month or two, again, going back into these like slumps. But I haven't recorded a podcast in like a month or two. And I was like, oh, well, that might be a good idea for an episode. But she's another channeler, so I need to do my homework, because I'm not just about to have nobody, just anybody on my show. So I listened to the interview that she did, and I was impressed. I was like, oh, you're just cool. I liked the energy. I liked the vibration. I like all of it. And so it's like, okay. So I hadn't finished it. I had like maybe 5 or 10 minutes left before it was done. And I was like, okay, I'll get back to it. And then if it works for me, then I'll reach out to them and ask if she wants to be on my podcast and interview her. Now, this is a strategy, y'all. This, what she did, emailing people that you want to be on their show, is a strategy that people who are trying to get themselves out there, who are trying to market themselves, it's a strategy that they use to get themselves out there. Sometimes you're not gonna end up on something unless you're actually asked to be on it, or you offer to be on it. And a lot of times, in many cases, people who end up in shows and end up in television, they ask to be on it. And so that's a strategy that people use to promote themselves. And just like John Edwards, when he's doing his tours, he doesn't just do the tour where he's in the stadium, where he's doing the readings. He also starts hitting up all the local radio stations for that area or region, letting them know about his show, letting people know he's going to be in the area, and then also just talking, because it's a promotional marketing strategy for himself. So it's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way of the world. You market yourself, you promote yourself. If you have a business, don't sit on your ass waiting for someone to come and buy your shit. Promote your shit and put a pretty sign on it, pretty bow on it. That's the way you do it. So that's just business. But for myself, I don't want to have to go through again. I'm lazy, so I was like, and so I was like, I thought to myself, because in my head they were like, hey, you should do that too, and I was like, I don't know if I want to. Like, I mean, I can just get something made up and then send it out. But I was like, I kind of just want people to approach me or just be approached by people, just because I feel like they would know who I already am. So that way I don't have to educate them on who I am or what do I do. And lo and behold, one of my followers was the producer of that TV show that I was on today, and she reached out to me, and that happened within a week of me having those thoughts and telling myself, I want to have somebody who's aware or familiar with me, and sure enough, that happened separately without me trying. So that's an example of like alignment, of like getting the energy right and lining up with what you're intending. Now that I still may have to like promote myself in some way, shape, or form in the future, but I wanted to have that experience of having people reach out to me. So it was nice to have that for my very first opportunity to be on television. Yeah, it's funny because there's a lady here who she's a talent agent, and so I'm following her because I know at some point, if things progress the way that I expect, that I'm going to need a talent agent who can deal with all that stuff together. Granted, you have to cut them in you have to cut them in on what you earn or what you make. But, I don't mind. I mean, if they're getting you work, then why not? And if they're getting you work in like those national stages or in like television, etc. And I'm fine with that. But I'm not I'm not ready to go to that stage yet. For me, this was a practice opportunity. Like, this is an opportunity to get on camera, be on television, and practice, and get comfortable with it. And so that's what I used it as. I didn't use it as like a make or break thing, even though that was going on in my head. I used it as an opportunity to practice myself. So, that's what I tell people. Like, if you have an opportunity to step into a scenario where you can practice something that you've been wanting to do, even if it's just practice, then do it. Don't say no to it. Go into it and practice it. Okay. Oh no, for sure. Yeah. Check out the agents. Check the agents out. Not all are honest. Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I definitely, for me, it's like, I expect the universe to line me up with the right person. And for example, with my hypnotherapist, before I moved here, I had been wanting to do more hypnotherapy sessions because I wanted to advance and develop more of my channeling ability. And I also wanted to understand what was going on in my life at that time from a soul level, because I knew what I was doing from a human level, but I wanted to understand the bigger picture. And so I had reached out to 2 or 3 separate hypnotherapists, because wasn't going to do this in person. I wanted to do it over Skype or whatever. So I had the intention to connect. And so I reached out to one, didn't hear, they responded like weeks later. And then after that, they never followed up with my next email. So I never heard back from them. Then some others just never responded. And I'm just like, people don't know how to run their own businesses, right? It's just, if you're in business for yourself, you should at least give somebody a response, unless that's an obvious, answer to their question or to what they're trying to reach out to you for. So I told the universe, I'm like, okay, y'all want me to do hypnosis and to start to go deeper. I'm trying. I reached out to people. I don't really know who else to go to. So I really would like to be with someone who's comfortable, who makes me comfortable, and who I feel a connection to on some level, shape, or form. But, I've already reached out, so I'm going to leave it up to you. So I tried my best and I reached out. And the universe has got me fucked if they think that I'm going to run around and try to reach out to 17,000 people. Like, no, I reached out to 3 or 4. That's it. I did something. So y'all can't say I didn't do nothing. So that's what I told the universe, right? So then, lo and behold, about a month later or 2 months later, I went to a party that I was invited to here in Santa Fe. And while I was mingling, this gentleman, I had just gotten there and I put my food down because it was a potluck, and I put my food down, and a gentleman was there at the table at the where the food was at, and he just struck up a conversation. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I was just happy to have someone to talk to, because I was so anxious and so nervous. Y'all may think that I'm like super easy to mingle and all that. It is really not that easy. I get very nervous and anxious in situations like that, because I'm used to talking about spirituality. I'm used to talking about my work. I'm used to talking about myself, right? I'm not used to mingling random conversations about nothing. I'm always used to having deep, profound conversations that are going to change your life. That's what I'm used to. So whenever I've had conversations with people, this was an issue that used to happen with my ex, where we would go to events or stuff, and he would get mad because I would start a conversation with someone at the event, and it became this deep, profound conversation that was revealing the depths of their soul, and it took attention away from him, and he felt like he couldn't contribute to the conversation. So it was an issue. So that's my issue with conversations and events and stuff like that. So I was nervous, I was anxious, but I started talking to this guy, and we just started chit-chatting away or whatever. And here in Santa Fe, the one thing you can talk about that everybody would talk about with you is Santa Fe, because everybody feels the same way about Santa Fe who's lived here, who's fallen in love with this place. So he and I started talking, and it turned out he's a marriage counselor. He's a marriage relationship counselor and a psychiatrist or a psychologist or whatever. So that's what he did for a living. So we were chit-chatting, and it was cool. I was like, oh, cool, whatever. So that was going on. And then within 5 minutes, a little lady comes around, and she's got like straight white hair, and she comes up, and then she like joins the conversation. I was like, okay, cool. And it turned out it was his wife. Well, it turned out she was a certified hypnotherapist who was certified by Brian Weiss, which is the person I always expected people to be certified by whenever I would look them up online. And so she had her credentials. And so we started talking, and she had mentioned, because I had told her that I felt that one of the reasons why I was back here in the Wild West and here in this area was because in a past life, I was part of Custer's army or military brigade, and I contributed to wiping out and decimating some of the native population here in that lifetime. And so part of me coming back here was making amends and helping to bring spirituality or to heal others in a way that can bring resolution to the pain and suffering I caused others in a prior lifetime. So I had mentioned that to her, and she said, that's really interesting. She says, I have a past life and a memory that came up in one of my sessions where I was a native and I was killed by a military brigade. And so it looks like from a past life, I killed her, or I was a contributing factor to killing her people. And so in this lifetime, she's helping me to heal people. It's the craziest thing. But, and so we formed a conversation in that we literally spent the entire time of that party talking to each other. It's pretty much what we did. And then she became my hypnotherapist. So, God sent me someone who was a good fit, an ideal fit, and it worked out for me. So that's just another example of like alignment and law of attraction and faith, because that's where the faith comes in. Faith is like, okay, well, I want to do hypnosis, but I'm gonna sit on my ass and wait for it to come to me. That's not really, that's not even faith. That's just being lazy and not really wanting to do anything to help yourself out. But if I went, looked up people, emailed people, yada, 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 I did something. I did my part. It just didn't line up in the way that I wanted it to. So I just waited and asked for help because I didn't know what else to do other than what I had control over. And the universe fulfilled that part of it. So it's another example of how that works here. How do you sense our past lives? Good question. So, good question. So there's different ways you can do this. How many do I have now that I remember? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6. Yeah, so I have 6 past lives that I remember, but it all happened or all surfaced in different ways. In my very first past life that surfaced, it was this situation that happened, and it was in a dream, because at that time I was meditating and I was asking the universe to give me memories of my past life, or to bring up memories from my past life so I could remember them. And I did it for for a while before it started to show up. But in that lifetime, it was actually out in an area like this, or Arizona. And we lived on a homestead, and I was the wife, and we had children, and I had a husband who was this big brute, guy who was a bit of an asshole, and he hated his life. He hated his job. And I think he worked in the mines, or they were trying to find gold. This was when they were trying to stake a claim and get gold or find gold in some of these mines. And so he hated his life, and he was just an angry person. And so when he would come home, he would beat the living hell out of me. And I remembered in the dream, because all this came up in a dream, and he would beat the hell out of me, and I hated him because I loved him, but I also hated him because he hurt me so much. So that was that lifetime, and I had all these kids, and I was always trying to be the proper wife and trying to do things without causing him to be upset or this or that. So it's very much what my mother went through when she was going through that relationship with my stepfather. And when I started to wake up from the dream, the people in the dream that I remember, the people in the dream, they changed, where the brute guy who was the bully who beat me all the time, turned out he in this lifetime was my cousin Jennifer. And my cousin Jennifer she's gay, by the way. It was funny because we were raised like brother and sister, my cousin Jennifer and I. And as we got older, we used to play Barbies, and I would be Barbie, she would be Ken. That's the kind of relationship we had, right? But she was also a bully. She bullied me as a kid, and she was always, go make me a sandwich, and go do this, and go do that. And she's also this like huskier, thicker, kind of, butch lesbian. And so that was that like energy there. And so I didn't realize it, but when I woke up from my dream, I remember the face changing of the husband in that lifetime, and it turned out to be my cousin. So it made perfect sense. Everything that I went through with her growing up and having to deal with, kid stuff and just dealing with each other, all of it made perfect sense to me after that. Now I understand why we always play Barbies and you were Ken and I was Barbie. Now I understand why you bullied me and you pushed me around. Now I understand why you were always telling me what to do. Now I understand why we were always fighting as kids. Now, all these things made sense to me. And one of the issues that she actually had to deal with in this lifetime was, and in that lifetime she would get drunk, or the husband, he would get drunk and he would beat me. In this lifetime, my cousin had to deal with being an alcoholic in a period of her life and having to overcome that because of the relationship she was in and being pushed into dealing with that issue. And she did, which I'm very proud of for her doing that. But that was something, so these interesting, and in this lifetime, I had to learn to stop being a people pleaser and being pushed around by people or letting people walk all over me and standing up for myself and being willing to bust someone's ass if they're going to come for me. So we had to learn our lessons in this lifetime, and it helped to resolve some of those issues in that past lifetime. So it's an interesting thing, but that was one dream, that was one past life. But if you want to remember your past lives, just intending to do so will align you with the opportunities to do so. And then you just have to make the intention a regular thing for you. So go to sleep every single night and intend and ask the universe to reveal some of the memories of your past life. And then you can go that route, or you can get what I got, which was a hypnotherapist to take you into a much more subtle, deeper state of awareness and consciousness. And then you can let the memories will surface back up. And that's where I got most of my other memories, except my Titanic one, the one where I died on the Titanic. I was a stewardess on the Titanic, and I was, I think, in the second class. And in that lifetime, I went down with the ship. And I remembered that one because I had the dream, and it was revealed. And I as a kid and when I was younger, I always was fascinated by the Titanic, and I was always drawing and sketching pictures of it over and over and over again. And I just, everything that would be on TV about the Titanic, this was before the movie, but I would be like watching it, like, and so I had this connection with that ship. And I was so excited about the movie when they were making it because I felt that people needed to see what actually happened. And so it was an interesting experience. But yeah, so I haven't said the name of the person that I believe I was in that in that situation with the Titanic, the person that died, because the family, the grandchildren, or the great grandchildren still live. They actually live in Australia, but they're alive, and I don't want to disrespect their family. And how would you feel if someone came around or started going on TV and saying, "Yeah, I'm your great grandmother, and I'm reincarnated"? Like, you may not like that. So that's why I haven't really said or put out there the name. But it's a stewardess from the second class. I have her picture. I have all her information because I had to go digging for it because none of the people I was finding, none of the stories that I was hearing about, they didn't match up to what I experienced in my dream. And I was like, okay, was I on the right ship then? And so I had to go digging, and I found one that matched up. And I was like, and not only that, when I originally had the dream, before I found the woman that I believed it was, I had found a random picture online of a female at that time in that period who was a stewardess. And I used that picture when I was making my thumbnails for the video of when I died in the Titanic. And when I found out who it actually was, like, a while afterwards, the picture of the people, they look almost identical. The women look almost identical. The picture that I just randomly plucked out of nowhere, and the female who I actually believe I was in that lifetime. So that's interesting. There's another lifetime that I believe I had, but I'm still not 100% confident about it just because it happened simultaneously, which means during that lifetime where I was this female stewardess on the Titanic, there was another lifetime that was at the same time. And I was like, well, there's just no way. There's no way that I would be two people at the same time. And what I asked Aja about, because I asked Aja about it, my soul's name is Aja, and I said, how is that even possible that I would be two people simultaneously during the same time frame? And Aja said, is that you keep thinking in linear fashion. The soul is not linear. The soul is ever expanding, and so you expand in multitude of directions at the same time. And so nothing is too complex for the soul to experience. So the soul can experience itself through several individuals in the same lifetime. And that just was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. How is that possible? And then Aja said, this is the same thing with soulmates. People think that, oh, well, a soulmate is someone who I'm meant to be with, and like my soul is half of a soul, and that my soulmate's the other half of a soul. And so everybody has a soulmate in their lifetime. And Aja said, no, that's not correct. Soulmate scenarios or situations are actually much rarer than people realize. And what is actually a soulmate it is a similar concept, but your soul can produce different personalities and express itself in a physical form in a multitude of ways during one lifetime. So whenever I think of my mama cat, Aja said my mama cat was my soul, because it's an aspect of Aja in a form, but it is just a form, not a full identity, but a form. So she's a soulmate of mine, part of my soul, and vice versa. And it's experiencing. It's like, think of it as this way. When you think of a tree and the tree bears several fruit, if you just go and you have a bite of one fruit and then someone says, why don't you eat the other tree? Did you know that there are other fruit on the tree? And you can think, how is that possible? I've only got one fruit. There's only one fruit. This tree can only produce one fruit. How can it have more than one fruit? That's the same process with the soul in lifetimes. People can exist simultaneously in different, but it's not me, Ferny, existing in another body. It's my soul Aja existing in another body, which just happens to be part of my soul, and I'm part of the same soul. So that's what a soulmate is. So it's not your other half. It's not a half of you. It's a formed version of a formed identity and persona of your soul that you're also connected to, but it's not you personally. It's the soul coming down through that. And that's essentially what God is. God is that with all things. So it's basically the repeating of the duplicating pattern over and over and over again. So I know we didn't read. I know we totally I didn't, but I gave you a law of attraction story, right? I gave you a manifestational example so y'all could use a real world life example so y'all could use, because reading it is one thing, putting it into practice and using it in the moment is a completely different story. So, and that's what I was trying to give y'all as an example of it. Reincarnation wasn't taught with Jesus or included in the Bible. Here's the thing with when it gets a little complicated when it comes to Jesus in the Bible and the idea of reincarnation. The problem is that the church had a monopoly on God. The Catholic Church had a monopoly on God. The Catholic Church was a bunch of people who were developing their faith, and they were basing it on some of the teachings of Christ. But they were also throwing their own stuff in it because Christ wasn't around to clarify what he meant in some situations, and they didn't really study the material too well. So they ran with it. It's just like you think of the QAnoners, think of the people who don't wait for the evidence and don't try to clarify. They just run with it, and then it produces and it just starts to manifest a completely new a path of conspiracy or a story or whatever. It's the same thing. And so you have people at that time who were followers, who were believers, who had seen what they had seen through the experiences of Christ, and they formed a faith around it. And but they formed that faith on the backs of the Jewish religion. So, Jesus was a Jew. Those people, they were Jewish people who were practicing their faith. So James, which was Jesus's brother, he was also supporting the Jewish faith. So when he went forward spreading Jesus's message after Jesus supposedly died, he was supporting it from the foundation of a Jewish belief system. And you had people at that time like Paul, who showed up, who was a Pharisee, who actually was one of the opposing forces that Jesus had during his ministry. He showed up and he never even met the guy. He never met Jesus. He just had a vision. He had an experience. And from that experience, he told everybody, I've met Jesus and he told me this. And they all believed him and he ran with it. And so Jesus's brother James was pushing one version of Jesus's teachings and his faith. And then Paul showed up, and Paul was trying to cater to the Greeks and to the Romans. And so he was trying to produce a faith that catered, or that was more desirable to the Greek speaking audience, to the Romans. And so there was that's where it split. And at the end of it, Paul's the one that won out. And that's what you have when you look at your common modern version of the Bible. You have Paul's version and vision starting from him on forward. James's version was lost in all of that. And then in fact, some of those teachings and some of those ideas and beliefs were actually pushed out with some of the meetings that were had, the Council of Nicaea, Emperor Constantine, when they were starting to hash out and work out some of the details about a common source that everybody could use, so they could all use the same source in the fourth century CE. Fourth century CE. So that's how it worked out. And so there was a lot of things. One of the things is that people believe, and based on the evidence and the scriptures, which there's actually more evidence that supports that Jesus had more of a Gnosticism, or he was more aligned with the Essenes. The Essenes was the other group that existed at that time. They had very interesting beliefs and very enlightened beliefs. They were vegetarians. Most of them were vegetarians, but they were more like, get away from these crazy people in the city. We're going to kind of create our own little oasis away from all that. We're going to teach compassion. We're going to teach more finer ideas and beliefs about our religious affiliation. And then we're also going to be vegetarians, and we're going to contribute. All the people who would become Essenes, they had to give up their property to the group. So if I want to be part of the club, if I were a wealthy man, I have to give the club my money, and they use that to support the community. And that was part of the Essene culture. And so that was a thing that they did. And they were more aligned with Jesus versus like Paul and the Pauline Christianity, which is what we now have as the Christian faith. And so it's an interesting thing, but they do have beliefs, and there are references to past lives or to reincarnation, but they don't clarify some of those references. And then you include the Gnostics, who were a group of people who believe they were following the true teachings of Jesus, or of Mary Magdalene, who was considered equal to Jesus at that time, depending on the Gnostics or who you ask. And so they have more of a belief and more of an understanding about the ideas of reincarnation. So, but it's all about who controls the people. You control people by controlling the information. And so if you control the information, then you keep people stuck in this box of understanding, and they don't have the ability to break that box and to see right through it. The problem is that you can see right through it if you actually read the book, and it depends on which version you read, because there's like hundreds of versions of it already now. But if you really pay attention and read, you can break right. There's a lot of holes in their stories. There's a lot of holes in the Bible. It's just like, the QAnon event. There's a whole lot of holes in what is pushed. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well. So you have to ask questions and dig and poke and figure out if something lines up or not. There's a lot more proof and evidence that actually supports the Essene path, James, Jesus' brother, and the Gnostics versus the Pauline community of Christians. So it's just interesting, but it's all about control. It was about control, money, and who was going to gain power. Because at that point, the church was getting very powerful, and they were having a say in things. And when you give people power, power corrupts. It corrupts. Money corrupts. Power corrupts. These things corrupt people unless you pass the test you've been given. And every person who is going to be a light in this world, or who is going to create change or bring about healing in large and grand ways, have to go through these levels of tests. They have to go through the test of money, of not allowing money to corrupt them. They have to go through the test of fame or attention, and not letting that corrupt them. They have to go through the test of controlling people. If people start to worship them or see them as something grander than themselves, then that person who is put in that pedestal has the power to control those individuals. And so these are levels of corruption that you have to overcome if you're going to truly be a master in a spiritual sense. And every single master who is going to do something incredible in this world has to go through those levels, has to go through that process. All right. I know I went into some random conversation, but it's something that I just wanted to talk about. So All right, guys, I love you all. I'm done. I gotta get going because I gotta make breakfast. I gotta make dinner. So I'm gonna leave y'all with that. I love you all, and I will see y'all next week. Okay, bye everybody. Bye everybody.